for anyone who doesn't know powerlifting. Now, how peaking actually works is because it's, as I said, you're trying to go as heavy as you can. It's a strength sport. It's performance based. So it's all about what you can do on that day. That's all that matters is what you can do on that day in that moment. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to Stay Peaked. Sam and I, my lovely wife Sam and I, we are doing a powerlifting prep. Sam's first powerlifting meet. It's going to be actually right now, we're a few weeks out. As of this episode, I think we'll be on peak week. It's perfect for the episode, perfect for the podcast. Stay peaked. We will be almost fully peaked by the time you are listening to this episode. And at least I can speak to our experience so far. It's been awesome. This will be my fourth or fifth powerlifting meet, and this will be Sam's first one. She's obviously a very well decorated amateur bodybuilder at this point. And so for her to venture out into this new endeavor is pretty cool. And it's loosely related. Powerlifting, it's in fitness, right? It's a strength sport. Bodybuilding, it's in fitness, not a strength sport. Although typically you're quite strong as a bodybuilder because you're usually quite jacked. Or you should be if you're a good bodybuilder. But yeah, so I want to kind of chat with you about our experience so far and kind of give you the deets, the dirty deets of how we've been cooking this up because I am coaching Sam through this. I am helping her with her powerlifting, her first powerlifting meet prep. And it's been an awesome experience so far. Sam, to give you some, a little bit more kind of just understanding about this and about Sam in relation to powerlifting, because most people would know Sam, at least through this show and through her Instagram, of course, through bodybuilding. Sam is a bodybuilder, and that's how most people know her. But from a powerlifting perspective, which is a strength sport, I'm going to tell you Sam's best lifts. And this is something that she is aiming to beat, all three of those, at on September 7th. Her best squat, okay, is 405 pounds. Her best bench is 240 pounds. Her best deadlift is 470 pounds. I'll give you mine for reference as well. My best squat is, I think I missed 473 at the last one, so 457. 457 squat. Best bench is 314. Best competition deadlift is 561. I hit that one at the last meet. And I will not be anywhere near some of those PRs. I'm aiming to push a PR as close as I can get to it for deadlift. I'd love to squeak out a PR on that. Bench may get close as well, but squats looking like that one will take a little bit longer. And I'm hoping to PR at the very least, PR all three of those and PR my total at my next meet, whenever that may be. But this will be a good kind of warm up meet to get me back into that groove of competing because it feels so freaking fun and it's cool experience. I was just telling Alex before we started the episode, the environment of powerlifting meet is really, really fun, depending on, I guess, which federation you compete in, because that can vary. But federation that I compete in, WRPF, all of those meets that I've done so far have been an absolute blast. And it really is just like a time where, especially as an adult, sometimes you don't make a lot of time for yourself to have fun. As much as I have fun with my day-to-day, I love my life. To be honest, most of it's pretty fun. But a powerlifting meet, the whole day is fun. It's like essentially what it is you're lifting weights as hard as you can, literally as hard as you can, pushing to your absolute max. You're ideally there with some friends, and if you're not, you're going to make some friends. You slap each other on the butt and say good game. You drink way too much energy drinks and overdose on caffeine, ideally in a healthy way. You probably are going to consume some type of candy. For some reason, this is popular at powerlifting meets. I think powerlifters have a weird thing where They like to convince themselves they need all these carbs when really carbohydrates are helpful for like long endurance activities. And as much as the meat day is a long endurance activity, it's you get 3 attempts per lift, and there's 3 lifts. So you get 9 attempts. So you lift 9 total reps on the platform plus your warm-ups. It's not that much work. It's very hard because it's super heavy and it's very psychologically challenging and physically. But it's not there's no endurance training there. So, you really don't need nearly as many carbs as you think for something like this, but you enjoy a ton of candy there regardless and way too much caffeine. And, I don't know, man, it's fun. Everyone's cheering on everybody. It's, uh, it's a blast that way. Everybody's kinda cheering on each other, which is fun. So, as I said, I'm coaching Sam for this. Her training so far has been going great. I think she's coming off a light deadlift week this week. Right now, I have her alternating heavy deadlifts and some lighter kind of technique work on her deadlifts because we're cleaning up some stuff there. Um, and we'll probably be pushing her into, at this point, we'll be like a weekish out. So she's probably hit her heaviest deadlift already. The deadlift is typically the heaviest lift for most people. And because it's the heaviest lift, it's usually the most fatiguing. So, um, I'm going to talk actually a bit about the peaking process with this and how you would peak someone for a powerlifting meet. And that is something that I'll be doing for Sam. And how to do that. One of the ways to do that is to uh, you kind of want to periodize or plan out when you're going to take your heavy lift of each lift. So again, you have these 3 lifts: squat, bench, and deadlift, and you want to plan out when you're going to hit those in training in relation to how far out from the meet. So for her, she will end up hitting her heaviest deadlift between 7 to 11 days out from the meet. Um, Maybe a little longer, but probably somewhere in that range. She'll take her heaviest squat probably in that same range, but closer to maybe 7 to 9 days out. And then she'll take her heaviest bench probably 6 to 7 days out, something like that. There's room for flexibility there based on kind of her performance up to that point, as well as kind of subjective markers like how she's recovering, how she's feeling, and as well as the actual numbers that she's hitting up to that point. But that's kind of the rough idea. The goal of peaking in powerlifting, how this actually works, is you have now the goal is to that's where we should talk about that. The goal, what is the goal of powerlifting meet? The goal is to lift as much as you can in all 3 lifts. So you want to hit the heaviest possible squat that you can. You get 3 tries to do that. You want to hit the heaviest bench that you can, and you get 3 tries to do that. You want to hit the heaviest deadlift you can. You also get 3 tries to do that. And then you take your heaviest of all 3 that pass. There are going to be judges judging each lift to make sure that you get, they'll give you lights, and there's 3 judges. So you need to get at least 2 good lights from all 3 of the judges. 2 out of the 3 passes as a good lift. So the best good lift of each lift, okay, will be tallied up for your total. So ideally, that's your best squat, your best bench, your best deadlift, and you tally that up for your powerlifting total, and whatever that ends up being. I think Sam's going to aim for somewhere over 1,000 to 1,100 pounds, somewhere in that range, as far as her total will be, and she'll ideally be doing that by PRing, actually getting a personal record on all 3 of those lifts. That would be perfect. That would be ideal. That is the plan. Now, that is the actual objective of a powerlifting meet. Um, you would, depending on, it's a weight class sport, so in your weight class, most people are trying to, not everyone is competitive in the sport. Sometimes people are more competitive with themselves and they're just trying to be better than themselves and basically just do better than their last meet. Um, some people are trying to actually be competitive and they want to win their weight class. And so how you win your weight class is you get the best total in relation to your body weight. So yeah, there's a spread of weight loss, or sorry, there's a spread within each weight class, which could be maybe like 82 to 90 kilos. I forget what the one below that is, 81 or something. So you have like, if it's 81 and 90, then you have 19 kilos there, of like a spread, right, within that weight class. So as long as you're under 90 kilos, you're in the 90 kilo weight class. Excuse me. Now, if you weigh in at, 89 kilos, you're damn close to that 90, or maybe you weigh in right at that 90, then you get the exact same total as someone who weighs in at 87 kilos. Even though you're the same weight class, that person's going to beat you because they're a little bit lighter. So that's kind of how that works as far as trying to win your weight class. So um, that's kind of the objective of what the actual competition is for anyone who doesn't know powerlifting. Now, how peaking actually works is because it's, as I said, you're trying to go as heavy as you can. It's a strength sport. It's performance based. So it's all about what you can do on that day. That's all that matters is what you can do on that day in that moment. So you're planning to peak for that moment as best as you can. How we do that is we are trying to schedule our training in a way that sets up the lifter to perform as best as they can in that moment. Now, important to understand is there's a concept called the fitness and fatigue model. And the fitness and fatigue model is basically this idea that when you when you stress out a body through training, which training is stressful, and it has to be adequately stressful to create an adaptation and make you stronger. The ideal adaptation is you get stronger, of course, in something like this. Um, if it's stressful enough, you will incur some amount of fatigue. So you're basically, I said the model is fatigue and fitness. Fatigue makes sense, right? It's like that you incur some level of fatigue if you've trained at all and you train hard at all. You will understand what fatigue is. It's this idea where if I go in and do a leg day at the gym, the next day, if I go in and do that same leg day, I'm going to be way weaker. There's a lot of reasons for that. You're going to have muscle soreness. Your nervous system is still recovering, and you need a certain amount of time for that fatigue to slowly dissipate so that whereas with the other side of the model, the fitness, so that the fitness can come back up. This is why you don't train legs every day. You might train legs twice a week or something as an example, because you could hit a really good leg day, be super sore and exhausted, at least in those muscles the day after. And then, maybe 3, 4, 5 days later, the fatigue slowly comes down. It gets to a point where the fitness is able to express itself, and the fitness is your ability to perform and see actually how strong you are, and you can perform another leg day, and you do that over and over again. So the fitness and fatigue is constantly undulating. But with powerlifting, because you're peaking into a meet, you're going heavier and heavier, you are imparting you are incurring a lot of fatigue, and that fatigue typically keeps climbing. You want to be smart with that to some extent because you don't want to incur so much fatigue that you either get hurt or you can't perform at all or you can't train enough to even get that fatigue in the session. But at the same time, you're training hard. So the fatigue is going to climb to some extent. And if the fatigue is so high that it's constantly masking fitness, that is fine during training to some extent. But it doesn't help us if that fatigue is still too high on meet day because that's going to mask our fitness and our fitness will not be able to express itself. So what we do is if you go back to kind of how I said I was going to schedule out Sam's lifts, we are doing that in a way so that as we're peaking her up into very fitness might not even be super high. It will be climbing up. That is the goal. But fatigue certainly will be climbing up. Both will be climbing up in tandem for the most part. Um, and fatigue will be extremely high 1 to 3 weeks out. It'll be very, very high, certainly 7 to 14 days out. And then from that point, what we do is we strategically strip away parts of the training that are creating that fatigue. So that'll be things like the training volume. So how much work she's actually doing, how heavy the actual training is. So those are the kind of the two main things. Um, so what we'll do is we strip back some of that. So, a good example is she will take like I said, she'll take her heaviest deadlift maybe 1 to 2 weeks out, 1 to a week and a half out probably. And, she's on that 10 to 11, 10 to 12 days out, takes her heavy deadlift. And then after that, from a deadlift perspective, we will be probably hitting, that'll be a very high percentage of her 1 rep max. Hopefully it's a PR. Even if not, it doesn't matter, but we're planning to hit a PR on the platform at the very least. But that will be incurring a ton of fatigue. So what we'll do to get that fatigue down in time for meet day is she will probably train, she'll probably hit one more deadlift before the meet day. So maybe 4, 5, 6 days out. And when she does that deadlift, it will be a much smaller percentage, a much lighter percentage of what she hit on her heaviest deadlift. So, and what I mean by much smaller is I don't mean like a 20% reduction, I mean like a 50% reduction. Um, so if she hits, I'll give you hard numbers here just as hypothetically. So we know that she's hit 470 deadlift before in the gym. So, if she hits 475, 480, maybe she, squeaks out a nice tiny PR there heading into the meet for her like heaviest deadlift, the last heaviest deadlift before the meet. She will probably hit something like 315 or even 285 or 290 or something like that. For the deadlift after that 6, 7 days out. So that will help to keep technique fresh and keep her moving and keep her kind of dialed in with the technical aspect of the lift. But it will allow that fatigue to continually come down so that as fatigue comes down, that fitness, which is the strength that she's built up throughout the entire prep, can express itself on the platform. So that was an example used with the deadlift, and we'll be doing that with the bench press, and we'll be doing that with the squat as well. And you're trying to do that with all three as perfectly as you can. This will be her first meet, so we'll kind of take some data from this based on what we do, and then she can we can kind of take the data from that, and then any things that we miss or could improve upon, we can apply that at her next meet if she chooses to compete again. But that's kind of the idea: is you're trying to play around with that fitness and fatigue model and concept and understand how that affects the body and how that affects performance. And the goal is to bring down fatigue all the way to a point that you wouldn't want to do in the gym because you want to incur some constant fatigue constantly. Um, and because you don't care about the perfect expression of strength, you're just trying to build that strength week to week, month to month, right? But for a day where all that matters is the absolute best performance that you can bring, you want to be in a state where we are not building strength anymore. We want to express strength. And how we do that again is to pull back that fatigue enough, that fitness, which again is just another term for, in this case, strength performance. We want that fitness to be in a place where it is able to be expressed. So we'll be doing that with all three. And that is basically the, that is how to do a powerlifting peak, or at least that is the concept that we are trying to do. And that looks different for everybody, but the concept is the same. The principles are the same. Some people need more technical practice for others. Some people incur more fatigue than others. Um, depending on the body weight and the weight class of the lifter, depending on what their numbers actually are, depending on, like I said, technical struggles that they have with certain lifts. And things like that. That's going to depend on kind of how you schedule those out into their peak and how you specifically peak that person. So everyone's kind of different that way. So this would be a good learning process for all of us. Um, It'll be an interesting shift for Sam as well because she, like I said, she's a bodybuilder coming over to powerlifting. So this is one of the big differences is bodybuilding is an aesthetic visual sport. It's all about how you look. So how you perform with bodybuilding, the performance is all about how you present your physique and what you actually look like. So it's kind of two things with bodybuilding. It's how you look and it's how you present how you look. Those are kind of the two main things. Um, with powerlifting, it's all about your strength performance, what you can actually do and how you can actually perform and how strong you are. So for Sam, this is an interesting shift because the training is also a little bit different. There's a lot of overlap, there's a lot of parallels, there's a lot of things that are similar, but um, one of the things that's very interesting that you kind of have to identify as an obvious difference, and if you are someone crossing sports either way, you have to understand this difference, is because bodybuilding is all about putting on muscle. Um, for the most part. You're building your body. If you're trying to put on muscle, when you're training, you don't it actually doesn't really matter how much um it doesn't really matter no, that's not how I should say this. When you train for bodybuilding, how you train should actually be quite inefficient. And what I mean by that is with bodybuilding, we are trying to stimulate a target muscle or more muscles or certain muscles. We are trying to target certain muscles. And to target those certain muscles, we have to stimulate those certain muscles. And to stimulate those certain muscles, we have to lift weight in a way that is very stressful. And the more stressful it is on that target muscle, typically the more stimulating it will be. And to do that effectively for bodybuilding purposes, to build the muscle, you actually want to be incredibly inefficient. Here's a good example. When you're doing a bicep curl, a lot of people understand that there's a classic internet meme of people who do bicep curls at the gym where they're swinging their arms around, right? And a lot of people look at that and be like, "Man, you're not even training your biceps. That's really inefficient." Is probably the word they would use, but it's actually not. It's actually very efficient because if you're trying to get, you know, if you're trying to get the dumbbell from point A, which is down here, up here, point B, um, that's actually the most inefficient is just to swing it up. But we're not trying to be efficient. We're trying to be very inefficient. Um, so to do that, you actually want to be very, very strict with how you do that. You want to have fixed elbow. Most people that have done bicep curls would understand this. You want to be very, very strict with how you train so that you stress out the target muscle enough and stimulate it enough to actually create that adaptation, which is just a bigger muscle. Um, with how that differs from powerlifting is you're actually trying to be extremely efficient. So with bodybuilding, you want to be inefficient. With powerlifting, you want to be efficient. And the reason for that is because powerlifting is performance based. It's all about moving the weight and the implement from point A to point B as efficiently as possible and um, not taking any more energy than is required to do that job. So if I'm doing a deadlift, for example, if I'm doing a deadlift, which is one of the main lifts in powerlifting as a sport, there's a way to do a deadlift that is very inefficient, and there's ways to do it that are very efficient. I can use Sam as an example here as well. I think she deadlifted yesterday or 2 days ago, and she sent me a video of it. And one of the things that she was doing is the bar was not as close to her legs as it could be, so not as close to her body. So, excuse me, the bar was drifting out in front of her. What happens here, this would be good for like a visual, but I'll just describe it to you. But when the bar drifts out in front of you, forward over your toes when you're deadlifting, is that creates a longer lever from your center of mass, and that makes it very inefficient. That's harder to pull. So if you pull a bar on deadlift that's farther in front of you than it is close to you, that could very well, you know, theoretically add 20, 30, 40 pounds and make it way heavier unnecessarily when you could just pull the bar in closer to you. And that's a job of your upper back and your lats for the most part. So that was something that I saw in Sam's deadlift, and so that was something that, I gave her feedback on. So that's something that she'll be focused on because from a bodybuilding perspective, if you're not trying to get the weight from point A to point B necessarily. The primary objective is to stimulate the target muscle. And if you're doing a certain deadlift, there's lots of deadlift variations you could do: stiff leg, RDL, conventional deadlift, sumo deadlift, rack pulls. There's lots of ones that you could do. But regardless, they're all very similar movement patterns. So if you're doing some type of deadlift variation for bodybuilding, you're trying to target a certain muscle group, which might be, or multiple. So you might be trying to hit your hamstrings, your glutes, your back, and you might be trying to hit one more than the other. So depending on that, you may try and actually move it a little bit more inefficiently to target that muscle productively. But with powerlifting, we don't want to do that because we're not trying to specifically target certain muscle groups in our main lift training. We're trying to improve our technical proficiency with those because that is the goal on meet day. Now, with powerlifting, where there is similarities, because that would be a big difference, where there are similarities is bigger muscles are typically stronger. So to get bigger muscles, we want to kind of take a page out of the playbook of bodybuilders and build up some of our muscle tissue where we are lacking. So that is where when we're doing things like our what powerlifters will call our accessory lifts, which is basically typically some type of variation or bodybuilding movements. It could be machine stuff, free weights, isolation movements, whatever. Um, the design there is to specifically target certain muscles that we need to build up to so that we can uh, strengthen our main lifts. So here's a good example. If someone is weak in their squat, they may have an issue with small legs. So maybe their quads are too small. It's like, great. What we can do there is, first of all, we could squat more. That's awesome. And we're going to do that while improving our technical proficiency and actually be efficient with it. And that's what we're going to focus on. But when we're doing our accessories for our squat for this type of lifter, we, we might do like certain quad biased split squat variations, or maybe knees over toes stuff or some leg extension work or something like that that really targets the quads very heavily. And when we're doing that, we're not doing that to be super efficient. We're taking a page out of the bodybuilding playbook in that sense to actually make it inefficient because we want to challenge that specific tissue, the quads in this case, to build up the muscle tissue there in hopes that eventually we can actually create a stronger squat from that bigger muscle. So hopefully that kind of gives you a good idea of some of the similarities between that and some of the differences. Um, the Yeah, I think I kind of covered like also the goals that we have with this as well. My goals are a little bit less competitive right now with this, and maybe I will be more competitive in the future with this. I'm looking forward to competing with my wife on this day and just having a ton of fun. I love competing. I like the platform. I like powerlifting meets. I really enjoy it. I also like the idea of having a goal to work towards too. It makes training more fun as well. But at the same time, I also lost 30 pounds. Um, and took a break from primary powerlifting training from like November till March. So I'm just I have a different body, I'm in a different place, I'm not as proficient with these lifts like I was before, so I'm kind of rebuilding in that sense, and so I'm kinda going in with no expectations from a numbers perspective, but I'm going in pushing myself as hard as I can on that day, set myself up as best I can, but I'm just looking to have a ton of fun, uh, get that bug back for, like, competing and just really enjoy competing, enjoy the platform, enjoy the day with my wife and our friends there, and then maybe look at another meet afterwards, and then kind of really dial it in for that. And with that one, maybe I can increase my performance expectations around it and hold myself to a standard where it's like, all right, now it's time to PR, and let's see what I can actually do here. But yeah, this will be September 7th. So depending on when this sucker comes out, we'll be damn close. So if you're around the Mississauga area, September 7th, that's a Saturday. Lifting will probably start around 8 or 9 a.m. Squats are usually the first, 2 to 3 hours of the day, depending on how big the meet is. It'll probably be at least a couple hours. They'll switch over to bench press. We'll do that for a few hours, 2 to 3 hours, and then we'll move over to deadlift, which will be 2 to 3 hours. So it's most of the day, but usually is done somewhere in the afternoon, somewhere near dinner. So if you want to pop by, it's at Freebird, Mississauga, not Freebird Health Club. That's their other location, but Freebird, Mississauga, the gym that's just south of the 401 off Dixie. September 7th on Saturday. It's most of the day. So come on by. They'll charge you like 20 bucks or something like that. You can come by. There'll be lots of vendors. There'll be lots of free stuff, and they're a ton of fun. If you've never seen a powerlifting meet, I definitely recommend you come by. Especially if you're in the world of fitness or you just like seeing people compete at anything and you like sports. You may actually really like it. It's kind of cool. It's a pretty niche sport, but it's a ton of fun, and it's a really cool thing to experience even just as a spectator. But you can pop in for an hour or two and come say hi and kind of see us do our thing. But if you're around, do that. You feel free to DM me at Tim_MSHC on Instagram if you have any questions about that, and I can kind of explain uh, where we're gonna be and give you directions to the gym if you need to. But we'd love to see you there. And as always, if you have any questions about powerlifting, if you have any questions about bodybuilding, you can reach out to me as well, or you can reach out to Sam at Slaysfit. She primarily works with competitive bodybuilders. So if that's your thing, she is the person to go to for that. But if you have any questions about this at all, I know that I kind of went into some of the nitty gritty around how to structure. I didn't really go into how to structure someone's prep necessarily, but I kind of went down the rabbit hole on the actual peaking strategy with that. So if you have questions on that, and if you're self coaching, maybe yourself for like a powerlifting meet, and you have questions about that peaking process, which is can be sometimes complicated. It's not. It's very simple, but it can be complicated if you're someone who overcomplicates things, which I'm prone to do. Let me know. I've peaked myself a couple times for meets, and I've also been peaked for a couple meets from another coach. So I can definitely offer you my kind of advice for that too. So thanks again for listening. Make sure that you are following us on Spotify. Make sure you're following us on Apple. Make sure you are subscribing to us on YouTube. Make sure you leave a comment and post us on your social media and tag at Stay Peaked. Love you guys. Thanks so much for listening.